There are two conversations in this business that I genuinely don't enjoy having. I've had them more times than I can count, and they don't get easier. One is with a buyer who's looking for a home that frankly doesn't exist. The other is with a seller who's about to find out their house isn't worth what they think it's worth, sometimes for reasons that have nothing to do with the market and everything to do with memories. Both conversations have the power to end a client relationship if I handle them wrong, and both conversations, if I handle them right, are exactly why clients trust me enough to refer their friends and family. Here's the thing nobody tells you when you get into real estate. The hardest part of the job isn't finding homes or negotiating contracts. It's telling people things they don't want to hear in a way they can actually hear it. Common belief. Most people think a good agent is one who tells clients what they want to hear. The perfect house is out there, your home is worth top dollar, just be patient. But the agents who build real careers, the ones who get referrals, the repeat clients, the 5-star reviews years later, are the ones willing to have uncomfortable conversations early. Because the alternative isn't kindness, it's a client who waits 6 months, loses money, or misses out on a home because no one told them the truth. I'm Mike Wascom, and today I'm breaking down the buyer conversation about needs versus wants, the seller conversation about price and sentimental value, and how I personally navigate both without losing a client's trust. Let's get into it. The first point, there is no perfect home. Every buyer comes with a list. 4 bedrooms, updated kitchen, big backyard, good school district, under a certain price point. And every single time, I have to have some version of the conversation that a home with everything on that list at that price does not exist. Or if it does, it's not staying on the market long enough for us to get there. The way I handle this is by separating the list into 2 columns early, needs and wants. Before we ever look at a single property, needs are the non-negotiables. Maybe it's a certain number of bedrooms because of family size, maybe it's a specific commute radius, or it's a single story because of mobility. Those don't move. Wants are everything else, granite counters, a finished basement, 3-car garage. Important, sure, but they're things we're willing to trade against price, location, or timeline. Here's the part that actually lands the conversation. I tell buyers up front, we're going to find a home that checks every need and most of your wants. The home that checks every single box on both lists either doesn't exist or exists and it's $80,000 more than what we're working with. I say that on day one. Not after they've fallen in love with a house they can't get, and honestly, here in Colorado Springs, this conversation matters more than ever. Inventory in certain price points in certain neighborhoods is tight. A buyer looking for an updated home in the Broadmoor under $500K or a single story in Woodland Park with a mountain views and no HOA, sometimes the math just doesn't have a perfect answer. My job is to show them that early, so we're hunting for the right house instead of the perfect one. When I have this conversation early, something interesting happens. Buyers stop getting frustrated at me when home number 12 isn't perfect. They expected that. And when we do find the home that's 90% of what they wanted, they're thrilled, instead of disappointed that it's not 100%. That conversation is hard, but it's nothing compared to the one I have to have on the seller side, because that one isn't just about expectations, it's personal. The second point here is the seller conversation, and that sentimental value is not market value. This is, hands down, the hardest conversation I have to have in this job. A seller invites me into their home, a home where they raise kids, hosted holidays, maybe live for 20 or 30 years, and I have to tell them what it's actually worth. And sometimes that number is lower than what they expected or lower than what they've emotionally attached to the place. Here's how I approach it. I never walk in and just hand someone a number. I walk through the data with them, recent comps, days on market, for similar homes. What's actually closing in their neighborhood right now, not 6 months ago. I want them to see the market for themselves before I say a word about price. Then I say something I've learned matters more than anything else. I know this home means more to you than a number on a sheet, but buyers walking through your door don't know your story. They don't know about your kitchen table where your kids did homework or the backyard where you hosted 4th of July for 15 years. They're going to compare your home to the 3 others they saw this weekend, and they're going to price it based on square footage, condition, and location, not memories. That reframe matters because it's not me saying your home isn't special. It's me explaining how buyers actually think, which is a very different message to receive. Then we talk price strategy, and I'm direct about this. Pricing a home too high doesn't get you more money. It gets you more days on the market, and it makes buyers wonder what's wrong with it, which then leads to a price reduction anyway, except now from a position of weakness instead of strength. The right price, especially in the first 2 weeks on market, often nets a seller more money than an inflated price that sits. In Colorado Springs and the Pikes Peak area right now, we're seeing this play out constantly. Homes priced for the right condition and neighborhood are still moving. Homes priced based on what the owner feels it's worth rather than what the market says it's worth are sitting. And sellers are having to make a harder adjustment later than if we just had an honest conversation up front. This conversation is hard because it can feel like you're telling someone their home, their life, in some ways isn't worth what they think. But that's not what's happening. You're protecting them from a worse outcome. Months of sitting on market, price cuts that signal desperation, and ultimately less money in their pocket. So how do you actually deliver on both of these conversations without the client feeling attacked or dismissed? That's the part most agents get wrong, and it's worth breaking down. The difference between a hard conversation that builds trust and one that ends a relationship almost always comes down to how and when you say it, not whether you say it. A few things I've learned the hard way. Have the conversation early, not late. Set expectations with buyers about needs versus wants in the very first meeting, not after they've already toured 15 homes and gotten attached to a number that doesn't exist. Talk to sellers about realistic pricing during the listing presentation, not after the home has sat for 60 days. Lead with data, not an opinion. I think your home is worth less than you expect sounds like a personal judgment. Here are the 4 homes that sold in your neighborhood in the last 45 days, and here's how yours compares, is a fact pattern. Let the data carry the hard part of the conversation. Acknowledge the emotion before you correct the expectation. With sellers, I always validate the sentimental value first. It's real, and dismissing it makes people feel defensive. With buyers, I validate their wish list is reasonable. The market just has limits. People hear hard truths better once they feel heard first. And finally, say it because you mean it, not because it's a script. Clients can tell the difference between an agent checking a box and an agent who genuinely wants the best outcome for them. That authenticity is what turns a hard conversation into a trust-building one. This is the actual job. Not always finding houses or writing contracts. It's telling people the truth with care the moment they need to hear it, even when it's uncomfortable. That's what clients remember. That's what gets you the referral 2 years later. If you're a buyer who's been searching for months and feeling discouraged, or a seller wondering why your home isn't moving, let's have an honest conversation. No pressure, no sugarcoating, just the truth about your situation. And a plan to move forward. Call or text the team at 719-237-0394. Let's talk.